and I'm live with a very special edition of MVP Chess on this channel. One of my students, her name's Kimmy. She is playing live right now at the ChessKid National Festival. Okay, they broadcast the top two boards. The top two boards. She finished yesterday on a perfect score. She won both of her games. So now she's playing the number two seed in the tournament. Okay, so I'm going to analyze this game live. I have the feedback on, okay, so you can see the accuracy of both players, but I have the evaluation and the lines turned off. So we're going to try to analyze this game live and see how she does. Okay, so Kimmy plays she plays the Italian game. Okay, she loves these lines with knight g5. But of course, bishop c5 in this position prevents the knight coming to g5 because the queen defends. So I'm really hoping here that Kimmy plays the move d3. Okay, she castles. That's good too. Okay, I've seen some games of hers online where sometimes she brings a knight to the g5 square and misses that it's being attacked by a queen or a bishop. So that's really good. Knight f6 attacking the pawn on e4. So perhaps, okay, knight to c3. That's an excellent developing move. Excellent developing move. Protecting this pawn. Black castles. Hey Rajesh, right now I don't have any music on or anything. Right now we are watching one of my students, actually. Her name's Kimmy. She's playing in the ChessKid National Festival, and she's made it all the way to board 2 in her section. So it's rare that as a coach I'm able to watch one of my students' games live. So this is just an amazing opportunity. I'm so excited for her parents and obviously for her that she gets to have this opportunity. Okay, we've got a very good position here for both players. Both players playing well. It is a bit symmetrical, okay? So her opponent Jonah is kind of copying her moves. Kimmy develops the bishop to g5. Very good. This is a nice active square for the bishop, and her opponent does the same. Okay, so we got a bit of copycat chess going on right here. A little bit of copycat chess, which is going to, if this continues, is going to favor white. Is going to favor Kimmy. Yeah, this is a four knights. This is a four knights game. Okay, so Kimmy decides to give up the bishop. Probably wanted to keep that pin on the board a little bit longer, but I think she probably did that with the idea of bringing the knight to d5. Let's see if she plays knight to d5 here. But now we got some pressure on this pinned piece, which can be a little uncomfortable to deal with. So let's see how it goes here. Okay, she plays h3, trying to kick this bishop. Let's see if black maintains the pin or captures on f3. Black does not maintain the pin. Okay, I think that was a definite mistake by her opponent. Okay, I think the critical line there was to bring the bishop back to h5, or if you don't do that, to capture on f3 and kind of compromise white's pawn structure. Bishop e6, that's the move I wanted to see from my student. I think that's a mistake. So in this position, we've got some tension against the bishops. So let's see how she chooses to resolve that. I would hope in this position that she doesn't capture and open the F file for black. Okay, so we talk about this a lot, connecting our rooks. That's always a good idea. Queen's hit by the knight. So the students have in this section about I think the time control is an hour with a 5-second delay. But at this age group, we're talking K to 3. They're playing pretty fast. They're playing pretty fast. Okay, so we've got a very, I would say, balanced game here. Kimmy's knight's attacked, so let's see how she deals with that. And we also have this tension with the bishops here. Okay, great move. So Kimmy goes and attacks the queen. Now we should see bishop takes d5 here. I think that's best. We don't want to open the e file for our opponent, especially with our queen sitting there. So I think bishop takes is best, hitting this pawn. And then let's say if black responds with pawn to c6, then maybe Kimmy can drop the bishop back to b3. And then, so I really like Kimmy's position here. I think she's playing so well. You know, we have bishops of opposite color, so if we do get into an endgame, this could become kind of drawish. But since we're still in the middle game, this might afford her some nice attacking possibilities against black's king. Okay. Notice Kimmy's bishop is much better than her opponent's. Okay, her opponent's bishop is biting on this pawn on d4. As Nimzovich said, it's just biting on granite. It has no scope. It's being really limited by its own pawn on d4. Whereas Kimmy's bishop on this diagonal doesn't have the same problem and has better scope. And I also think Kimmy has the potential plan after retreating this bishop, I think, to b3. Okay, she chooses c4. Okay, that might run into a quick b5. So she'll lose a little bit of time there, but that's okay. So I think she needs to play bishop b3 here, and then she just needs to watch out that if her opponent plays a5, trying to trap her bishop, that she gives her bishop a nice escape square by either playing a3 or a4 in that position. So we should see bishop b3 here. Should see bishop b3 here. And then I think, what would Kimmy's plan be once she takes care of her bishop? Okay, if black plays a5, she needs to either play a3 or play a4 just to make sure this bishop is nice and safe. I think Kimmy can look to expand on the king side, maybe with f4, and bringing this rook from a1 to e1, centralizing her pieces and trying to go for attack. Okay, so this is a critical moment in the game, really critical moment in the game. Will she realize that pawn to a4 will trap her bishop? Let's see. So it looks like both players are doing a pretty good job taking their time. I like that Kimmy has less time on her clock. Okay, that means she's not being provoked by her opponent into playing too fast. She's playing slow. She's thinking of her moves. Okay, so she plays f4, which is a really good idea. Okay, we talked about that move, f4, attacking on the king side, but unfortunately she missed that pawn to a4. Traps her bishop on b3. Fortunately, it traps her bishop on b3. Okay, so she counterattacks by playing pawn to e5. So in scholastic chess, you know, really anything can happen. So I think it's really wise that she's just playing on. She's trying to find the best moves. I think she probably realizes that her bishop is trapped here, but she's doing the right thing. She's seeking complications and she's playing actively. Okay, and she took with the queen. Okay, In this position, I think it would be best to take with the pawn. Okay, we want to keep queens on the board because after we exchange here, without our queen on the board, we're really gonna be missing our bishop here. Okay, so let's see. One thing we talked about in our last lesson was the concept of a desperado. Okay, you're gonna lose this piece anyway. You're gonna lose this piece anyway. So can we just sacrifice it on f7 before giving it up? Okay, she captures. We have another capture here. So I think taking with the A pawn might be best, although that would lead to an exchange of rooks. So we shall see. But Kimmy's a fighter. I've seen her fight back from positions where the eval is much worse than this. Definitely. She's not going to give up. She's going to keep fighting. Okay, so she plays C takes B3. I mean, we're always taught to take towards the center, but I actually like her decision here to keep this rook on the board, because taking with the A pawn would have allowed a pair of rooks to come off the board. So she's keeping the game as complicated as she can make it. And maybe, okay, this pawn's under attack, but maybe she can get some play down the C file by attacking this bishop and going after this backward pawn on C6. So we shall see. Her opponent's playing very well. 93% accuracy. I really like, going back to move 16, I really like that she found this move, f4. That's a great attacking move. It was just played a move too soon. Just needed to secure that bishop. Okay, so developing the rook from A to E1 defends this pawn. It does leave this pawn a little bit vulnerable, though. Okay, let's see how she responds here. So f6, we could consider taking on f6. We could consider pushing on to d6, creating a passed pawn. I think if we create a passed pawn, though, that pawn's going to become very weak, and her opponent's going to be able to attack and win that pawn. So maybe best here is to seek some pawn exchanges, just because the closer that we can get to an endgame where her opponent has a bishop and we just have a king, and she just has a king, would give her good drawing chances. Okay, when you're down in material, it's often a good idea to exchange pawns in the endgame. When you're up material, such as black is in this position, it's sometimes a good idea to keep them on. Okay, I think that's a really good decision. So let's see how her opponent responds. Okay, they take. Let's see what move Kimmy plays here. I think we need to take on E1. Pawn F7 is tempting, but I think the king can just step over there and then eventually win that pawn. So I think just taking on E1, and then maybe after G takes F6. Good job. Excellent move. I think in this position, maybe playing the rook to C1. Okay? Either the rook to C1 or rook to here, attacking these two weak pawns. Let's see. This game is not over yet. Anything can happen. Black's got some pawn weaknesses in their position. And Kimmy does have a pawn for the piece. So we've got some weaknesses to attack here. White also has a weakness here. So another candidate move would be playing pawn to A3 in this position. That's possible too. She plays pawn to A3. I like that move. Let's just take care of the weakness on the queen side and then attack Black's weak pawns. Now, I think pawn to a4 is a really good move here, giving her a protected pass pawn, which are both on the light squares. It'll be difficult to challenge that with this dark squared bishop. So I think pawn to a4 is correct here. I think that would give her some pretty good counterplay. Pawn to a4, and then maybe looking to activate the rook and attack either the weak c file or these two weak isolated pawns here. Hey, Chess Dave. So Chess Dave, right now we are watching one of my students live. She is competing at the ChessKid National Festival, and she made it all the way to board 2, which is so awesome. So the top 2 boards of each section are broadcast live. So she's playing on a DGT board right now, which is so cool. So I'm able to follow her game live, which is really rare because, okay, she decides to take. So exchanging pawns isn't bad either. That's a good move too. You know, seeking exchanges and trying to draw this game. You know, draw for her against the second seed would be a fantastic result. Okay, so the rook is under attack right now, so we need to move it. I think now that this bishop's on b4, it's best to bring the rook right here. Attack these two weaknesses simultaneously. Because if we bring the rook to the c file here to attack this weakness, then black can just play pawn to c5, defending the pawn and anchoring the bishop in there. So I think rook to e6 in this position is the critical move. So this is US chess rated, so technically she's unrated. Because she's from Canada, so she doesn't have a formal U.S. chess over the board rating. Yeah. Okay, I like that she's really taking her time here. This is excellent. And she finds the best move. Rook e6. Boom. Love that move. Way to go, Kimmy. That's really, really good. Okay, her opponent gives a check. That's no big deal. Let's see where she steps with her king. You know, this is going to allow Kimmy's king to become a little bit active, okay? Let's see if she can use this king as an attacking piece in the endgame. Okay, now that the queens are off, we don't have to be scared with our king. You know, maybe we can just start trying to like march our king all the way up the board and even try to checkmate black. Who knows? Rook e6, really nice move. Okay, and Kimmy plays the best move, king f2. Excellent. Activating her king. So these two pawns are undefended. So if she's able to win one of these pawns, which I think she is, she will only be down 1 point in material. Okay, and this is not an easy position for black to win and black to convert. Okay, attacking here. So will Kimmy defend, or should she defend, or should she capture one of these pawns? We don't want to go too passive, but at the same time, okay, she gives a check, and the bishop interposes. Okay, if I were black in that position, I would have kept my bishop where it was and just played king f7 and activated my king. So let's see how she responds to this attack on the b2 pawn. Now that I think she moved the rook e2 probably would be best. Just trying to maintain the balance for now, and then look for some king activity and to attack these weak pawns. Okay, she's just going for king activity. Okay. So this does allow her opponent to take on b2. I like that she's using the king as an attacking piece. Because all of these games for these kids, I like what GM Canty said yesterday about L's not just being losses, being learning opportunities. These games are just fantastic learning opportunities. Okay, so her playing on and continuing to fight and understanding concretely the importance of king activity in the end game and rooks on the second rank, all of these key things. Look at her bring her king up. This is awesome. She's just going for it. She says, you know what? I'm not going to passively defend my pawns with my rook. I'm going to get my king as active as possible and maybe try to get some sort of checkmating attack. So king f5 would win the f6 pawn, it looks like. This is a weakness too, though. Maybe king e4? Maybe king e4 here? The problem for white with this bishop interposing and this king defending the f7 square is there's really no way for white to apply more pressure to this pinned piece. So let's see what she decides to do here. Okay, she's just going for king activity. Okay, I think this is going to win the f6 pawn. Black can take on d3. So black has two connected pass pawns here that he's going to look to move down the board. We need to watch stepping our king to the e file here rather. Like we wouldn't want to play the move king e4 attacking this rook because rook e3 would skewer our rook here on e8. But maybe Kimmy can take on f6 and then look to get this rook behind one of these pass pawns and win it. Let's see if she can do that. Hello to everyone in the chat. But right now I'm just focusing on my students' game. I'm just so proud of her. In her first big tournament like this, to finish with a perfect score on day one and make it all the way to one of the top boards and be featured live on the stream. That's just such an accomplishment. Okay, she plays pawn to h4. She's definitely in attack mode right now. Okay, but this does allow black to scoop up the g pawn. So I think it's critical for white here to not fall further behind in material. I think white needs to start attacking these pawn weaknesses on the queen side. But the problems after rook c8, her opponent would have the move c5, defending and holding everything together, supported by the bishop. So her opponent is doing a pretty good job with rook activity here. Okay, so she takes, and her opponent pushes on. So this pawn may become a little overextended. So I think the best move in this position is rook d8. And notice black can't play c5 in that position and defend this pawn. So if we have rook d8 and black captures on g2, Kimmy captures on d3, then that's a lot of pawn exchanges, okay? And that's really going to favor her because she's the side defending. These pawn exchanges definitely favor her. And her opponent is up a piece right now, but right now it's pinned. Okay. So we'll talk about this. Where we want our rooks is not in front of, but behind the pass pawns. So we want it from behind attacking. because now if she goes to attack this pawn from the front with rook d1, black can push pawn to d2. So I think just going back in that position, if she had played rook d8 in this position and we had a capture on g2, then she would have been able to take here and maintain a nice active rook and maybe look to win the weak c6 pawn too. Black's king is a mile away from these passed pawns, though. A mile away. So, Kimmy's king is in a much better position to defend against these passed pawns than her opponent's is to try to escort them to the promotion square. So if black had an active king here as well, let's just imagine we could teleport this king to c3. It would be very difficult, very, very difficult for any drawing chances in this game. But it's all the way here on g8, and Kimmy's able to perhaps come back. The one thing she needs to avoid in this position is bringing the king to the e-file. Because if she brings the king to the e-file, this will allow this check on e2. Kimmy would be forced to exchange rooks. Let me just show that line to you. She would be forced to exchange rooks here, and this pawn would promote. So right now her king cannot step to the e-file. Okay, so that was a mistake by her opponent. Her opponent definitely should have played d2, okay? And I don't like that check from black, because all it's doing is bringing her king closer to this pawn. And look at this pawn. What color is it on? It's on a light square, which means the bishop can't defend it, which means white's king and white's rook can gang up on this pawn and hopefully win it. If she can win the c4 pawn, I think she has excellent drawing chances. Okay, I actually think Kimmy has, even though her opponent is ranked number 2, the second seed, I think she's shown superior endgame knowledge to her opponent. Just look at the king activity, right? She recognizes that this king is an attacking piece. It belongs in the game. Her opponent does not. You know, her opponent has not made a conscious effort to activate their king. So the key thing we have here is this pawn tension, okay? We got to avoid, though, moving this rook to c1. Okay, we don't want to move the rook to c1 because then black would be able to skewer our rook with the bishop. Would be able to get a skewer. So, I think it seems like it takes longer, but maybe bringing the rook all the way back to d8 and then to c8 and apply pressure to the pawn from behind is the way to go. We just got to avoid stepping onto one of these dark squares with the rook. We've really got to avoid that. I'm sure the moves Kimmy's considering here is rook g3 check, getting out of this check with gain of time, and rook d8. She may also be considering the move rook d1, but as we discussed before, we want this rook to be a little bit more active. So either attacking the pawn from behind or laterally. Okay. Oh, and Kimmy missed the skewer. Okay. She moves the king and her opponent grabs on c3. Okay. Let's keep fighting here, though. Let's keep fighting and see if we can get the draw. Perhaps forcing our opponent to stalemate us. That's possible. So it's understandable here. For so long, white had this bishop on f8 pinned with this rook, and you know you kind of think of that as an immobilized piece, but once that rook stepped off the back rank to attack these pawn weaknesses, then the bishop was able to move. Okay, so I'm sure Kimmy right now is feeling a little down that she missed that tactic, but she's really, really good at just moving on and finding the next move and not getting discouraged. That's such an important trait of a chess player. I mean, it's something that we all struggle with, including myself, is missing something on the chessboard and kind of getting frustrated, and then that affects your play. You just gotta kind of move on and try to find the best move in the position. Okay, so she activates her king. I like that she's pushing this pawn. Okay, let's extinguish the reserve tempi in our position. And by reserve tempi, I mean moves that we have other than the king, okay? We don't want to find ourselves in a position where we're stalemated, except that we can play the move h6 and black can win. Let's just get rid of these pawn moves. Okay? So I like that. I like the way she's thinking there with this pawn to h5 move. And I love how much time she's used. Okay? 37 minutes versus her opponent 58, okay? She's really taking her time. She's really taking her time. And this is what's going to help her in the long term, okay? To have that patience, to have that discipline, to not play quickly, to take your time, to try to find the best move, okay? Even if you make a mistake, okay? That's going to serve her really, really well going into the future. Whereas her opponent, Jonah, who's playing very, very well, he's going to need to learn and to change his game, especially as he gets stronger, to start playing slowly. And this is a problem that a lot of kids, a lot of scholastic players have nowadays, just because, you know, the emphasis on online chess and blitz and bullet and all this, it's sometimes very difficult to get the kids to slow down and take their time in a classical tournament like this. But she's done a fantastic job. Okay, pawn to h5. Let's see how black responds. One thing I notice about this position, just go with me on this. If Kimmy is able to win this rook and this pawn, okay, and never say never, okay, I've seen things like this happen before. Her opponent actually has the wrong color bishop to promote this pawn. So that is one drawing theme in the position that I see, is that black, it would be a draw if black had the material in red and white just had a lone king. All Kimmy would need to do would be to get the king in the corner to draw that game. But obviously we're a very long ways away from that. Okay. So it looks like I missed a bunch of moves. My apologies there. So she got rid of her reserve tempi. Excellent move. Her opponent starts to push. She looks to blockade the pawn. Good job there. And it looks like her opponent is just going to try to maintain the balance on the king, on the queen side, and maybe win on the king side. Okay, her opponent gives a check. Let's see where Kimmy goes in this position. I think we got to go to c1. I think we've got to go to c1 here. It's tempting to take the bishop. It's a nice deflection tactic by her opponent. But then Jonah could play c1 equals queen. So I think we just need to resist taking this bishop on c3 and just play the king to c1. King c1. Excellent move. Okay, it doesn't look like my board is updating automatically, so I'm just going to have to keep an eye on the score sheet here. King c1, bishop e5. Okay, looks like her opponent is preparing the move bishop f4. Okay, that's a nice Bishop e5 is a very nice move. That's a very, very nice move by her opponent. But you can see in a position like this that Kimmy's only legal move was king d2. If black had taken, let's say in this position, if black had taken this pawn, stalemate. Stalemate. So that's, Kimmy is finding all of the ideas in this position. All of them. Which is really, really great to see. Okay, but her opponent recognized the stalemate threat, dropped the bishop back to e5 to give Kimmy's king a safe square on d2, and now has given this check on c5. So now, unfortunately, Kimmy's king is going to have to step away, perhaps to here, and her opponent is going to be able to make a queen. But, and this is a big but, her opponent will have a rook, queen, and bishop against the lone king. Okay, and I talk about this a lot with my students, is sometimes having too much material is a bad thing because it really increases the likelihood of a stalemate in the position. But just going back to this position, Kimmy was one move away from getting a draw after king takes h6. That is just so great that she was able to force that chance on the board. And I knew she would keep fighting. I knew she wouldn't give up. I knew she would try to find every chance that she could in the position. Wow. I actually see, if king b3, there is a stalemate. No, there's not. I was going to say if black promotes to a queen, there would be a stalemate trick, but the b3 square would be available. Never mind. Okay. So I think what Kimmy wants to do is to try to look for ways to force some sort of stalemate here. Maybe bringing the king a little bit closer over here, kind of boxing the king a little bit, would give her the best chances, rather than just leaving it out in the open where her opponent can put like an easier ladder checkmate on the board. You know, a lot of scholastic students are very familiar and very adept at putting that on the board, the classic ladder checkmate. But, you know, maybe if we start running with the king here, her opponent cuts off on the 7th rank, and then all of a sudden maybe we could have a stalemate. But it's really nice that she doesn't have a reserve tempi over here. She's already expended it. All right, so there's the queen, and she goes over to attack. Okay, and after the king in this position steps to the a file, it'll be mate in 1. Black will have queen a1 checkmate to win the game. And there's really not much she can do in this position, unfortunately. But play on. Force your opponent to put the mate on the board. And after this, we'll just go through the game really fast. Well, not really fast. We're going to take our time with it, obviously. And her opponent delivered checkmate. So, well done by Jonah. He played a very good game, as you would expect from the number 2 seed. But I think Kimmy just acquitted herself so well, and I know her mom and dad are going to be really proud of her, and I am as a coach too. I mean, her first big tournament, to make it on one of the top boards, and to stream, and to make the ChessKid stream is just so awesome, so awesome. All right, let's go back and look at this game. So we have an Italian game on the board. This is her favorite opening. Yeah, good game, Kimmy. Yeah, Let's get some good vibes, some GGs for Kimmy. She played an awesome game, And just going back to this final position, a lot of kids would be maybe discouraged by this result. I don't think this is going to affect her play at all in the next round today and the other rounds on Monday. Like she's really good at just learning from her mistakes and moving on and having fun with the game. That's why I know she's gonna become a great player if she sticks with it. Okay, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. So a lot of Kimmy's opponents, a lot of them have been playing the two knights defense, knight g5, knight gf6 rather. And Kimmy's been responding with knight g5, this kind of fried liver type of attack, and she's been winning so many games, awesome attacking games in this line. We actually looked at a game that Paul Morphy played in this line. Bishop c5 is rarer, let's say, at the scholastic level. So I'm really proud of her in this decision. Look, she used 20 seconds here, okay? A lot of scholastic players would just continue with the same pattern and play knight g5, but she recognizes that this knight's development has been delayed, so this queen is defending the g5 square. So knight g5 would be a blunder, but she recognizes the difference in the position. That's fantastic. And castles instead. Really great move. And after knight f6, attacking the pawn. Okay. Again, she doesn't go for knight g5, which is a great move. We don't want to play knight g5 here because it doesn't have the same attack, because in this position black would be able to castle, okay? And this will prove to be just a wasted tempo in the position. So Kimmy plays knight c3 instead. Awesome, defending this pawn, putting the knight on a great square. You can also, in this position, play pawn to d3 and go into like a Joko piano. But developing the knight to c3 and playing an Italian 4 knights game is much more intuitive for a scholastic player than putting the pawn on d3 and then developing the knight to d2 and maybe making this type of maneuver like you see in the Italian and the Ruy Lopez a lot. It's much more straightforward. It's much more intuitive for her to put the knight on c3, the best, most active square, and take it from there. So that was good. Castles, d3, perfect move. Getting ready to develop the bishop. And black is simply copying her. And after bishop g5, this is a great move, okay? This is the downside of the bishop c5 lines in the Italian. This is the downside of that, because since the bishop is outside of this pawn chain, black never has the ability to drop this bishop back and break the pin. Okay, so you really have to be focused on a pin on the f6 knight and white applying more pressure to it. So black copies, and Kimmy takes on f6 unprovoked. Okay, we'll see that the computer gives this a question mark. I think that's a little bit harsh for a K through 3 tournament. Bishop takes f6 is a fair trade, a natural move. I understand why she played it, especially after queen takes f6, maybe playing a move like knight d5. But this is something that we can talk about, is kind of the value of this pin and trying to maintain it. So I think in this position, probably would have been best for Kimmy to either put more pressure on the pin piece with knight to d5, or maybe even challenge this bishop. And let's see if this would provoke her opponent into playing bishop takes f3. This could be good for us. Even though we let the knight into d4 rather, we can just bring the queen back here, keep everything nice and defended, and look to follow up with knight to d5. So a position like that could have occurred. But by taking on f6, white develops black's queen to a pretty menacing square, and this puts a lot of pressure on the pinned piece. So probably best in this position is to play knight d5, just attacking this queen here and forcing her back. But Kimmy recognizes the strength of this pinned piece and tries to resolve it by attacking it, pawn to h3. And to her opponent backed up to e6. So I think from black's perspective, and this is a great learning opportunity for Kimmy as well, is to either drop this bishop back to maintain this annoying pin. Okay, white could break the pin by playing g4, but then the king becomes very, very weak. The king would become very weak. The other possibility black had in this position was to capture here. And after we have this series of exchanges, white's pawn structure is a little bit compromised, and maybe black could even consider clamping down on the king side by playing a move like g5 and really targeting these weak squares, and then let's see, maybe rerouting this knight to the f4 square. That would look pretty good to me. But you know, this is an advanced concept. You know, maintaining these pins and tension between the pieces. So it's understandable why both players in this position kind of misplayed their bishops and their pins a little bit. So in this position, Kimmy decided to connect her rooks. Okay, that's a really good idea. So she knows now that her rooks are connected. I like to call them holding hands, right? The rooks are holding hands, so she knows her development's complete. She could have considered here, though, just because of this tension, we don't want our pawn structure to become compromised. An interesting move here is just to drop the bishop back to b3. Okay, why do I say that? Well, if we take on e6 to resolve the tension, then now her opponent may well have captured with the queen, because a lot of scholastic players don't like double pawns. You know, they're taught that they're bad and they just avoid them at all costs. But black would be able to capture with the f pawn and get control over these two squares, and most importantly, open this f file for an attack. So that's why I was thinking that the best move in this position is just bishop e3, okay? And then if black takes, white can take back with the a pawn, and then the rook is on a nice open file. But queen e2, it's like, I'm proud of her for making that move, because it shows that she has a solid fundamental understanding of opening principles, and she's trying to connect her rook. She understands the importance of that, and she probably didn't want to move the same piece in the opening more than twice. Like, Kimmy's a very classical principled player. She can also attack really, really well. But I think that's probably what was going through her head in that position. It's, I need to connect my rooks. I don't want to move the same piece in the opening more than once, which is fantastic. And in 90% of the positions, that's the way to go. But in this position, it would have been better just to resolve this tension a little bit more favorably, because after these exchanges, well, I was actually thinking, instead, for black in this position, instead of jumping in right away, that black could inflict this weakness on white's pawn structure and take away white's good Italian bishop. But instead, they jumped in with the knight. Kimmy took, best move, awesome decision. Okay, she recognized that the queen and the knight were en prise, so she took off this piece. And then after opponent recaptured, she played the next best move in the position, knight d5. Okay, keeping this bishop alive, gaining time on the queen, and now her opponent has a weak pawn in d4 that is really blunting this bishop. So after this exchange, here comes the kind of critical moment in the game, okay? Let's actually go back a move. So we have bishops of opposite color in this position. Okay, Kimmy has a light square bishop. Jonah has a dark square bishop. So this can be very drawish in an endgame. Okay, bishops of opposite color lead to a lot of drawn endgames. But in a middle game, when there's still queens on the board and we still have the rooks, okay, all the major pieces are still on the board. This can actually offer really good attacking chances because your opponent doesn't have a minor piece to defend or challenge you on this color complex. So for instance, in this position, Kimmy's bishop is really actively placed. Okay, she did a great job keeping this bishop alive, getting this bishop to the d5 square, and she's got nice pressure on the f7 pawn. This bishop, it's on a dark square. It can do nothing to defend this square. Okay. Meanwhile, this dark square bishop is just biting on granite. Okay. This pawn it's in its way, so it doesn't get the same kind of pressure on f2. So I think in this position, Kimmy is better. Okay. She came out of the opening better than her opponent, who's the number two seed in the tournament, which is just fantastic. So her opponent attacks the bishop, understandable, and she drops the bishop back to c4, which ran into b5. The safest square for the bishop in this position is just dropping it all the way back to b5, to b3. Okay, that way b5 doesn't come with tempo. It doesn't come with an attack on the bishop, so she can just develop her rook, and after a5, okay, this is critical because this is what happened in the game. We just need to realize that pawn to a4 will trap this bishop. So in this position, we could just play the move pawn to a3, so that after a4, this bishop has a nice safe square on a2. In the Italian and the Spanish, I call the light square bishop, I call it my bambino, my baby, just because it's such an important piece, and you want to make sure that it's nice and safe. So that would have been a nice way to save this bishop. And then look at this position, okay? I think this could have occurred in the game. Kimmy found this move in the game, f4, starting this attack. But look how strong this position is, okay? f4, maybe pawn to e5. If we can open up the f-file, we would have our pieces really well coordinated to attack Black's king. And I think she would stand really, really well in this. But instead she came back to c4, which allowed pawn to b5, and then she found bishop b3. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. You know, a tempo like that in a position like this is not the end of the world. You know, it's not like we're in an opposite sides castling position. They call the Italian games and with d3 gioco piano, you know, the slow game for a reason. It's very maneuvering. You can get away with some loss of tempi and some inaccuracies. Okay, and then her opponent played a5. So in this position, Kimmy needs to recognize that this bishop is on the verge of being trapped. So the move here to play is either pawn to a3, which I think is best, or even pawn to a4. And you know, if Black were to capture, that would be good for White. But one of those two moves to save the bishop. She played f4 in this position instead, which is a fantastic attacking move. This is the precise move that you want to play in this position. It was 100% the right idea, but she just missed that. We had to get a safe square for the bishop first. So after a4, this attacks the bishop. Kimmy's on the back foot a little bit. So she's going to go down a piece. She plays the move e5, which I like. It's a nice active move. Her opponent takes, and then she takes with the queen. Okay. So in this position, I think it's really important for White to keep the queens on the board. Why do I say this? Well, White is about to go down a piece. Okay, so white needs to keep the position complicated. White needs dynamic compensation for the bishop. So I think in this position it would have been better to capture with this pawn. Okay, we gain more time on the queen. We open up the f-file, and yeah, after a move like this, we could consider doing a desperado like this. I don't know if that would be best. Probably best in this position is actually to move the rook here. Just keep this tension so that we have an exchange like this and we keep as many pieces on the board as we can. And I think, you know, black is definitely better here, but white has got some tacking chances, you know, with the rooks and the queen on the board. But after queen takes e5, that's kind of giving black what he wants. Now he's able to exchange queens and then take the bishop. So black's conversion will be much easier because they're up a piece and they don't have the queen to worry about. I really like this decision by Kimmy to play c takes b3. Okay, it's a bit anti-positional. You know, we're told in chess that you need to capture towards the center, but look what happens if she does that. Okay, this is the positional move. Pawn takes, but then black is just able to exchange a pair of rooks. Okay, and let's say play rook to here, attacking this pawn. And if you defend here, then black could consider two moves. I mean, one of which is just f6, or I was even thinking bishop d6, but I think f6 is just a little easier, applying pressure to this pinned pawn. And you know, Kimmy's got absolutely no activity in this position. So that's why I thought it was a really excellent idea, a really great decision by her to play c takes b3, because that keeps this rook on the board. That keeps counter-attacking chances alive for her. Okay, so her opponent attacks her weak pawn on e5. We need to defend that, so it's important which rook we choose to do that. She chose the a rook. She chose the a rook to defend, which her opponent missed this, but her opponent could have come in and activated their rook on the second rank, which is really, really strong. If you're black and you can get a rook on the second rank, or if you're white and you can get a rook on the 7th rank, that's where they belong, okay? Because they can just gobble up all the pawns and cut off the king. So her opponent missed that. That's why I think in this position, rook f to e1 would have been better, just to maintain defense of this a2 pawn. Okay, but her opponent missed that and instead played pawn to f6. But this is going to lead to some more exchanges. I think Kimmy made the right decision taking here. And after takes, she played a great move, pawn to a3. This is really great, shutting down the activity of this rook along the file. Her opponent pressed on with b4. Okay, so Kimmy's got, you see my notations from during the game, she's got a potentially weak c-file to work with and two pawn weaknesses here. In this position, she decided to play a takes b4. I think the best move in this position would have been to play pawn to a4. Okay, so what this does is gives white a protected pass pawn. Okay, a protected outside pass pawn. Okay, it's on the a file, very far away from this king. So black will constantly have to babysit this pawn during the game. Okay, and make sure that it doesn't promote, which will allow Kimmy's other pieces, her rook, her king, to get very, very active. Okay, so I think pawn to a4 in this position would have given her the best chances. But she decided to capture, which is okay. You know, that's an even trade, and she's also exchanging off pawns, which is a good idea when you are down in material, right? If we can just envision an endgame where black has a king and a bishop and white has a lone king, that's a draw. In fact, you have great drawing chances too if you just have a rook and a king and your opponent has a bishop, rook and king, okay? So it is a good idea to exchange off these pawns. But a4 would have given her more long-term play and long-term compensation for her missing piece. Okay. In this position, she plays the best move, I think. Rook e6, attacking these pawn weaknesses. Okay, her opponent gives a check. She steps up her king and attacks this weakness on b2. So this was a tough decision here. You know, do you start capturing these pawns? It's a difficult decision, because if we just go through with this line, Black would end up with this passed pawn. So I actually don't think we can get away with taking these pawns. But what Kimmy's move, Rook e6, did, which was really, really good, was it forced Black to seek active counterplay with the move Rook a2. So after she gave the check and the bishop came back, now I think she could have maybe gone passive just for a second, played Rook e2, defending this pawn, and then maybe look to bring this rook to the c-file, or take this opportunity to start advancing her king and improving her king as an attacking piece in a position where Black isn't gobbling up the pawns on the queen side. But she played for king activity. Okay, that's just great that she recognizes this concept in a game like this. You know, her opponent really the whole game kept their king on the king side. So that's really an area of improvement for Jonah. If you happen to be watching this, is just remember that in the end game, okay, do what Kimmy did in this game. Really try to get your king active and use it as an attacking piece. But this allows Black to start gobbling up pawns. Okay, so Kimmy's king is getting very active, which is good, but she is losing quite a number of pawns here. Okay, and she played this move. Let's see, the position I want to get to is here. Okay, so we reached this position where Kimmy decided to bring. Oops, misfire there. Kimmy decided to bring her rook to e1 to defend this pass pawn. Whether you're trying to defend against your opponent's pass pawn or you're trying to promote one of your own, the best square, the best placement of the rook is behind the pawn. Okay, that's where they can exert the most pressure on the pawn and also stay the most active. So I think in this position, now that this pawn has moved up, it's a bit overextended. And I say it's overextended because it can't be defended by its fellow pass pawn on the c-file. So I think if we play the move Rook d8, okay, attacking this weakness, notice Black's king's out of the game, this bishop's still pinned. If White captures here now, we can take this pawn on d3. And I think White would have a very good chance of winning this c-pawn in the game. You know, in a practical over the board scholastic game, I think White would have very good chances of winning this pawn, and we would be getting very, very close to our the end game that we were aiming for, with either king and bishop versus lone king, or even king, bishop, and rook versus king and rook, both of which I think could lead to a draw. But coming passive to the e-file, I understand. You know, she's saying this pass pawn, I need to defend it. I need to attack the promotions to defend the promotion square. It just would have been better to do it from behind, because now Black is able to take this g2 pawn, and White is not winning the d3 pawn in return. Okay, but she keeps fighting, of course, and her opponent misses her attack on the d pawn. Okay, I think it was critical in this position for for black to play pawn to d2 and really restrict this rook. But her opponent misstepped and played c5, and Kimmy capitalized on a mistake. Rook takes d3. Awesome move. Okay, so now, after this check, which just improved Kimmy's king position, okay, there are two things that come to mind. Well, one thing comes to mind here that I didn't mention in the game is, where do you bring this king? I think e5 is the best square. It's the most active square. And I know that's why she played it, because it's centralizing the king and it's getting the king back to the queen side, back to defend this pawn as quickly as possible. Coming to a light square, though, just keeping the king and the rook on a light square and just kind of playing around this bishop is a practical way to play, because then you don't need to worry about pins and skewers and things like that that can arise with this piece imbalance. Because after c4, this was the critical moment in the game. Again, I think Kimmy has done a fantastic job fighting in this game, creating practical drawing chances for herself. She just misstepped with this skewer. She brought her rook to c3, which allowed her opponent's winning move, which was bishop g7. In this position, kind of like we were discussing before, it's best to bring the rook back to d8, okay? Now this bishop is pinned. It can't move. Okay, and we're prepared to bring the rook behind the passed pawn and attack it. So, let's envision a position where black pushes on, pawn to c3. We play rook to c8. And then pawn to c2, okay? Then we can start bringing our king in. Look, notice how active Kimmy's king is, and it's been this way the whole game. Her opponent's does not. I think white's got very good chances to win this pawn. You know, after her next move, king d3. So that's kind of the line that she needed to find there. Unfortunately, she missed this check and the skewer, but she kept fighting. Pawn to h5. Really like this decision, okay? Once again, trying to extinguish her reserve tempi to try to create drawing chances for herself, stalemating chances. And she came this close to doing it. After bishop a1, h6, okay, now she only has king moves on the board. That was the correct drawing strategy. Pawn h6, great move. She starts blockading with her king. And we arrive at this position. Right here. Fantastic job. Fantastic job creating these drawing chances, okay? In this position, if black makes any move with the king, whether it's capturing this pawn, whether it's trying to bring the king further up and defend here and create a mating attack, this is a stalemate. This would have been stalemate. But credit to both players. Credit to Kimmy for not getting discouraged, for fighting on, and for finding this drawing chance in the position. I think when I saw this position, it was like 50-50 whether or not it was going to be a stalemate. But also credit to her opponent, Jonah, in this position for finding this really excellent move, bishop e5. Really nice move. This gives Kimmy's king a square on d2, which she's forced to play, and then the bishop's able to check the king away, and Jonah was able to promote the pawn, get a queen, and win a nice game with a ladder checkmate. I hope you enjoyed this, and what I hope most is that Kimmy enjoyed watching this. Maybe she'll be able to watch this video before her next round, or maybe later today, and it'll help her in the rest of the games. But I wish her the best of luck. I know she's having a lot of fun, and just want to let her know that I'm really proud of her play. She played really, really well, and I know her parents are too. So keep having fun. That's what it's all about. And I'll see all of you guys, MVP Chess, next time. We'll be back to our normal stream and everything. But I really hope you enjoyed looking at one of my students' games live. I know I did. It was so much fun. So I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you later.